Below the Stone is a difficult extraction roguelike, about digging deep below the earth and bringing back loot as a dwarf. Mike Strollert has been working on it for 5 years, went through a failed Kickstarter and then a successful Kickstarter, turned down multiple publishers and then finally went with one, and he's learned many lessons along the way. In this conversation, we explore his experience working on the game, scaling up a team, making design decisions for the game, and much more. Tell me a little bit about your journey with Below the Stone. How long have you been doing games?
So Below the Stone is our first commercial title.
Okay.
I actually have been working on this game for around 4 or 5 years now. And we released into early access 2 years ago.
Cool.
It's kind of funny. We kind of, in a way, we failed upward isn't the right way to put it, but it's a thing where like you learn from your failures. Sure. And if you take the lessons of what you've gone through and the troubles you've gone through and actually learn from them, it's kind of helped us along the way. Like we failed a Kickstarter and then later succeeded a Kickstarter to gain funding, right? Yeah. So we've been on both ends of the spectrum with Below the Stone. One time we just, I knew we had to seek funding somehow. So I was like, Kickstarter's a website to do it. And we shot our shot, and then we put like a 10K goal, which is just ridiculous. Like there's no way 10K is going to fund this game. But I was like, we gotta shoot our shot. We got to try something. So we asked for 10K and we only raised 5K of that goal. But with no build-up, with no social media, with no anything. Yeah. So I was like, we got something here, right? Like if we can get 5K in funding from a bunch of strangers on the internet who've never seen us before with an unproven concept, just by like putting a trailer out there and being like, hey, this is our game. I was like, with some build-up and some serious attention, this might work.
So how long into development was that first Kickstarter?
Probably, I almost want to say like 6 months.
Okay.
Like 6 months to 8 months, and we just really had a prototype. It was like it was just a bunch of loose spaghetti things and ideas. Sure. And we put together a trailer and this kind of random assortment of like ideas and put it together, and is this kind of dream game idea that we had. And then we finally put it out there. We got this, we didn't quite hit our goal, but we hit a bunch of benchmarks that we probably wanted to hit. It was a bunch of people, like now we had a fan base of people, like 100 or so people who are like, keep going. And those are the cheerleaders you need, when you're early starting out. So we had our cheerleaders now, the people who are like, you do it, Mike, you do it, and then, that sort of awoken this whole dream, and then publishers started contacting us because they were like, oh, there's this game, and it's suddenly, it didn't quite make its funding, but I think there's a bunch of poachers, bunch of publishers that poach for indie games on Kickstarter.
Interesting. So I've never heard of that before.
Yes, there is a significant amount of publisher poaching on Kickstarter.
And is that a good thing? Because poaching usually has a negative connotation.
It can be if you're seeking the funding via a publisher, I suppose, right? Like it all comes down to the individual and what you want. Sure. But there are publishers that scalp, I guess, go through Kickstarter and sift through the weeds to see if these are the kind of games we want, right? And at the time, I thought publishers were all blood-sucking vampires. And there's many that are. I after all these publishers were messaging me, I think Devolver even reached out to us, and they were like, "Oh, we want to publish this." And then I just started blocking everybody because, again, at the time I was thinking like, I hate publishers. I just block them all. And I didn't realize what I was doing was like this dating game thing where like when you pretend like you don't want something, they want you more. And what ended up happening was I was blocking them, and some of them were like, okay, they were like, all right, no, we shot our shot and that's it. But then there were some that were like very like, ooh, we want this more now.
Interesting.
And then we happened to meet our current publisher with Below the Stone via this process. I had Scott Miller message me, and just like all the other publishers, I just immediately blocked them. And then he messaged me like on Twitter next, and then I blocked him again. And then the CEO at the time of the company messaged me and was like, he wrote this really nice, like, hey, you know, we're really serious about this. We really care about your game. You know, we want to fund this. We want to get it to the finish line, et cetera, et cetera. And then I blocked him. And then eventually they messaged me on Facebook. I don't know how they got my Facebook, but they messaged me on Facebook, and then it was like, hey, what if we like give you a better offer here? And then I was like, all right, I won't lose anything by talking. And that's kind of the thing I give indie devs now, like advice. It's like, you don't lose anything by talking. You ultimately hold the power at the end. You can always just say no eventually, right? So I don't think you know, maybe it's going to come down to the situation, but you know, playing the hard to catch game might work in your favor sometimes. And sometimes doing the thing where you don't quite say no, but you say maybe, and you kind of do this game of like seeing this cat and mouse game that you do. And
so how did they win you over, since you were so opposed to the idea of a publisher originally?
Well, at first they eventually called me, and I didn't know who Miller was at the time. But I looked him up, and he had a Wikipedia and everything, and I was like, oh. And I called him, and I still thought it was a scam. I'm like, all right, let me see if this guy's actually real. I'm looking him up and stuff, and eventually I found out, okay, he's real. He's part of this publisher called Apogee, 3D Realms, part of the industry for like 30 years or so. And then they did Duke Nukem, and they worked with id Software before Doom, and they worked on Wolfenstein, and I was just like, all right, they got quite a library here. They worked on Prey, bunch of very, very popular games, and I was like, all right, well, you know, money isn't the only thing that is valuable. Knowledge is also valuable, and I thought to myself, well, this is my first game. Whether this works out or doesn't, I'm going to learn a lot by doing it. And that was the thing that convinced me. It was, I am going to learn a lot. I'm going to learn the good, the bad, and the ugly by doing this deal. And it gave us funding, which was great. You know, there was like all this preceding, like, just it allowed us a little bit more room to finance the game, as well as get to physical shows, because Apogee, our publisher, ended up going to physical shows like PAX and PAX West, and they would pay for like the flight and the travel cost of that. And then we would go to those shows, and we would talk with influencers and streamers and YouTubers and so forth at the show. So meeting face to face and giving out game copies to them brought some value. Of course, PAX itself also PAX itself has a Steam page that is they like cover the Steam front page with all the games at PAX during those couple days. So you get wish lists and sales by doing that. So there's value to going to the physical show just because they throw you to the front of the store page.
So
what
was that impact like?
Like it depended on the show. So what I've noticed is at a physical show, you definitely get less wish lists than you would at a digital show. And it makes sense because there's only so much throughput at a physical show. Like if you put a table down and you have people walk up and play the game, there's only so many people that can like stop in, grab a business card and be like, oh yeah, I'm going to go home and remember to wish list this game, right? There's only so many people that remember all the way, like all those steps, right? Of course, the storefront helps a bit because that's like a digital presence, and it's easier for people to like scroll through and find their games to wish list. I find the most wish lists come from that store page more than the actual physical show itself.
Yeah.
The show itself, you're maybe getting like press and influencers and people who happen to be at the show, who stop at the booth and might cover the game,
Yeah.
and show it to their audience. But you'll generally see like I've heard numbers like you'll get like 1K to 1.5K wish lists generally by going to a physical show, which from my general, like if you math it out, it's not fully worth it unless you count all the like, oh, you're making connections with people and you're talking with other indie devs and you're meeting with other people. Of course, you can like hit the lottery and get like a really big person to cover the game. Or you could hit the lottery, get into like a thing like PAX Rising, which is like a like sort of exclusive booth region in PAX, where if you get into that, you're getting like 2,000 to 3,000 wish lists a day for 4 days, which that starts to be significant, right? Yeah. So there's like this big range that happens at these shows. Like some people might only get like 600, 700 wish lists during a physical show, but then there's others who end up getting like close to 10K wish list during a physical show, right? No kidding. And then that starts to look more worth it, right?
Is there just more foot traffic?
There's more foot traffic in the Rising area. However, the digital presence of the PAX Rising is significantly better because they get put to the top of the store page on Steam as well. So like there's all like the 100, like 200, 100 games or so that are at PAX. And then PAX Rising is like placed at the top. Right. So everybody, they see those games first, right? But yeah, that's the sort of value I've seen from PAX itself.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry, my brain's kind of going all over the place. We're talking about PAX and publishers
very,
and funding and stuff. Yeah,
because I actually don't know too much about the physical shows. I've never been to one. Did you get any exposure to influencers that mattered at the show?
Yes, I've noticed that we specifically. I can't name them off the top of my head, but like we would talk with certain people at like IGN and some of the bigger press groups as well. Yeah. So you're kind of forming connections potentially for the future. It comes down to this thing of like physical shows. A lot of times, when you compare them like apples to apples with digital shows do way better in terms of wish lists. Yeah. But they are slightly apples and oranges. Maybe this one's a Granny Smith and this one's a Honeycrisp. You know, there's slightly different varieties. Sure. But it's like at a physical show, you're getting certain other valuable things that you might not get in a digital show. However, the digital shows we've been a part of, like OTK Expo, when we were doing the interview with Asmongold, we ended up getting like 8K, 9K wish list from that. Wow. So that's like in one event, 5 minutes on screen.
Wow.
Me being a dope in front of camera, like stuttering, like that gave me 9K wish list.
That's unbelievable. That's like huge.
Yeah. So that's the sort of thing that it's one of these things. You, as an indie dev, you miss all the shots you don't take, right? So it's kind of like, I find it worth going to the physical shows if you have the resources to do it. Of course, there's you do have to do some like value judgment and figure out, if it makes sense for your game and everything.
And what year was this?
We did PAX. We did PAX from like I think it was right after COVID. We did it from like 2021 to 2024, and I think 2025 we stopped doing PAXs. Okay.
I was curious because I imagine that COVID had an impact on the physical shows.
Yeah. It even had an impact on our contract with our publisher because the publisher deal had certain things in that contract that didn't take into account a worldwide event like this happening, right? So like at the beginning of the contract, it's like, oh, we're gonna go to shows immediately, right off the bat, and then COVID happens. Like, oh well, now we're kind of out of the game for like a year or two.
Yeah.
Like we're not going to physical shows, we're not doing those things. It impacted a lot of industries, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so 5 years later, how are things going?
We're in early access right now. Finally, we're kind of in this point where we've been developing through early access for 2 years. We want to make sure the game is right. We don't want to like just ram something out there.
Yeah.
We want to make sure everything's right. We're listening to our players. We're play testing constantly. And now we're at a point where we're looking at early next year as our 1.0 release.
Cool.
So yeah, and we've been kind of like, if you look at our sales generally, we're at this like this plateau almost where like we're getting consistent sales.
Yeah.
We'll notice around update periods and around like certain sales, like we'll get those spikes, the spikes you'd expect. But generally speaking, through the development early access, it's been this sort of like gentle sales period where we're just sort of like money comes in and then money goes out, spending it into the game and paying everybody. And then we're getting to 1.0, and then that's when we're kind of like done development, you know.
Yeah.
1.0, maybe we'll do a couple updates after that.
How big is your team?
6 people, but it depends on when you ask. Sometimes it's 7, sometimes it's 5. It depends on the certain period of development.
And how does that scale feel for you? Is it the perfect amount? Does it add unique challenges? Because I imagine that has grown over time as development of the game's continued.
Yeah. We started with just 2 of us, and I prefer a slow building of a team. I don't like the idea of like, let's just grab a bunch of random people off the internet and throw this thing together, you know? So whenever we would be interested in getting somebody, we would put out advertisements for that. And I remember our musician specifically, when we hired him, he was actually the only one to really ask about the game and want to talk about the game itself.
Really?
And it's funny, and this is just advice in general for anybody who's interested in getting in the game industry.
Yeah.
I had a lot of musicians reach out to me and talk to me, and usually it's a copy paste, just like, here's my rate, here's some of my songs, here's some of my tracks, hope you hire me, right? And then he was the different one. He was the one in 100 who started with like, I want to learn more about this game. I'm really curious, and like asking gameplay questions and like, oh, that reminds me of this and that, and suddenly we're talking about the game, and then he's like, well, I'm really interested in making music for this, and it came out of actual personal interest and not just like monetary, financial, like I'm just looking for a gig to work on, right? He was actually genuinely interested in what we were doing, right?
I love that.
And even and to this day, I always say to myself, like, even if he's like a master manipulator and he was lying to me, it's like he still put in more effort than anybody else. So that's what I want in the music. I want effort. So like, I joke with him that, but like, at the end of the day, it's like effort. Effort counts, and it's tough. I know it's tough for people in music and stuff to find gigs, and I know it's tough for artists to find gigs. Like I talk with artists all the time. I talk with musicians, programmers. It's hard to find the right gig.
Yes.
So I can understand those people that just send out a bunch of copy paste messages. Like, I'm just gonna send out 100. Yeah. But yeah.
So 6-ish people. What's the distribution? Is it like how many artists? How many developers?
So we have 2 programmers, 2 artists, a musician, and then at certain periods we'll have like a sort of auxiliary programmer or 2, depending at the time period. So they have full-time jobs. Yeah. So in their position, they'll sometimes throw in hours into the game when they can, depending on the time of the year and everything. But and one of them is also a full-time game dev. So he's got his own projects he's working on. So it's sometimes like we'll trade work with each other and give each other something along the way. Yeah.
What language is it written in?
C#.
What engine? Is it Unity?
Unity.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
And has that felt sustainable? Has that been a good choice throughout? development?
Yeah. So generally speaking, Unity for us has been good for Below the Stone,
Yeah.
and it's one of these pieces of advice that like that should be said to any developer. Like at the end of the day, the engine you pick should be what you need for this specific game, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
It should be one of these things that like um, you have picked this engine. You didn't just roll a dice and go, oh, it landed on Unity. We're doing that now.
Yeah.
It really comes down to the game you're trying to make.
Yeah, well, that's interesting. Because I know that first of all, there's a lot of controversy about engines, and I'm kind of also of the philosophy that like whatever works for you works for you. There is no best engine. It depends on the project, just like you said. And I was also curious though about like the scalability problems, because I know that sometimes when projects get larger, people struggle with Unity. I used Unity for one of my jobs many years ago, and it was like the longer I worked on it and the larger the project got, the more difficult it became. But you haven't had that experience?
Generally speaking, like and I think this is an experience that a lot of developers have, right? We've ran into little issues here and there, like generally speaking, with the game being this large and being worked on for this many years.
Yeah.
We've had things where like, oh, we got to go back and kind of refactor this old system, right? And there's obviously like general like when different people on the team come together, it's like you just got to be really good at communicating like, okay, we're working on this.
Yeah.
We're doing this now. Like, this is how we're building this system because it integrates with this thing. Yeah. And the game we're working on with Below the Stone, it's like a lot of systems like kind of connect all the gears, like lock teeth with each other. And because of that, it makes it an even more unique challenge because like if we build something over here, like, okay, we got this new ranged combat thing that we're adding, it needs to integrate with the new set bonuses that we're adding with armor.
Right.
And if we do these two systems in slightly different ways, it's not going to mesh well, right? Like now it's like it's tough, It's a tough thing to do like a long-term game like this.
Yeah. Do you have any favorite plugins or anything like that? I know that Hot Reload is quite useful, and I know every developer has their own favorites.
So this would actually be a better question for Andrew, our lead programmer, I think. Okay. So if you want, I can actually hook you up with him as well if you're interested in anything else in the future. Yeah.
Cool. Okay. Yeah. So you're like a developer and designer then?
Yeah. So I guess my personal thing I do is I do a lot of the art in the game. I do the design work.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is one of those things where I will also say that this is like a credit to everybody too, because at the end of the day, we work as a team, and like whenever I'm doing art stuff, it's like I'm passing it by the team and just being like, hey guys, what do you think of this? You know, and we're all kind of working on these things like in tandem with each other.
Cool.
You know.
So I didn't realize. So are you primarily an artist and designer then?
Yeah.
Oh, cool. Okay, awesome. Yeah. For some reason, I had it in my head that you were a developer. Well, that's very interesting. How did you go about finding developers to work with?
Yeah, so this was, and I stated this before with finding our musician. It was one of these things where it was a process of like going out there and finding the right people. When I was thinking about the idea of Below the Stone, I put together a document and I put up, like, I had all this art done for a game that wasn't actually, no work went into this game. I just had art and screenshots for a fake game.
Yeah.
And I went, this is Below the Stone. And I would put this in front of people that I knew.
Yeah.
So I had a friend, Andrew, who I knew for a long time. We gamed together, and he was a programmer. And like I said, I put these fake screenshots together. I'm like, this game right here, this is Below the Stone.
Yeah.
It's a game about dwarves mining into the deepest depths, and you're exploring, and you're going through dungeons, and this is something that I know you play Dwarf Fortress, Andrew, and I know you play Minecraft and all these other games.
Yeah.
Do you want to work on this game together? And he's like, this game? And I'm like, yeah, it's a game. I got all this art, and do you want to work on this together? And then that's kind of how we started the journey.
Cool. Very cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
Where did you draw inspiration from? I'm actually rather new to the extraction shooter genre. I actually first encountered it with Zero Sievert, although I know it's a lot older than that. Yeah. Are there games that you played that made you want to build something like this, or how did that come about?
So it's funny. How vulgar can I be on this video?
I can always edit something out.
Okay, yeah. So okay, so with me and Andrew used to play a game called DayZ.
Yeah.
And this was always known as a game that like it was tough. It was a game where people basically the analogy I always use is it's for people who like getting their balls slammed in car doors for fun. That's how I always and like it was like one of these games that was just like really tough. It was really like
because you lose everything when you die.
Yeah, you lose everything when you die. Yeah, and there's some inspiration with that. And from when I was a kid, I was like, there's something about games that like immersed you so much into the game that you pick up your controller and throw it across the room. And like I just remember that distinct feeling as a kid and just being so immersed in the game and what was happening on screen. Yeah. And I was like, in a way, I don't want to get people angry and breaking stuff, but I want people to like feel something when they play this game. Right. I want people to look at the screen and be like, oh my god, I just lost, punch the desk, right? There's like something about that feeling of like, ooh, you know, like and there's something even better about going through that challenge, punching your desk like an hour before, and then you win. You know, like there's that feeling of like relief, like, oh my god, I went through all that trouble and I won. You know, like I love that feeling, and I was like, you know, that's something that like I almost want to recreate, like that, like something tough and a challenge, and then when you get to the top, when you finish it, it's like, wow, I went through this journey. You know, I went through this journey to get here. All the losses, all the wins, you know, everything accumulated to this moment. I wanted Below the Stone to kind of feel like that.
I can see that, definitely. So, yeah, I'm very curious about this because I feel like roguelikes are really good at making you care and making you have something to lose. And so that's kind of like the umbrella genre, because like even like if we look at Rogue Legacy, it's obviously not an extraction shooter, but has similar mechanics in that when you die, you lose everything-ish, and there's kind of meta progression in that you build up your home base, just like Below the Stone. So I am curious about like the more specifics, like how did you land on this implementation of a roguelike rather than all of the other ways that it could have been expressed? With a home base where you have these NPCs and you have your vault and you can build up things and buy things, and where did that come from?
Yeah. In a way, it's almost like Tarkov, how like, you know, you have your area, your base. I forget what they call it in the game. But, you know, instead of a physical game world, they show it as like it's like basically just UI. Like you interact with like UI stuff. Yeah. I guess sort of inspired by that. There's also Deep Rock Galactic, and there's something I always wished I had in Deep Rock Galactic. It was like, I wish all this stuff I was doing wasn't just getting me like it felt like every moment was like very encapsulated. Like every dive I did was very like, it's only this experience and nothing else around it. Right. I was kind of wishing that like, oh, I could build towards something like meaningful. Yeah. Like, oh, I'm upgrading this area and I'm doing this over here at my base, and like I'm doing quests and stuff and helping people. And I was like, this, like I was wishing for stuff like that. Yeah. And I was like, you know, with this game, I want to do something a little different. I want to do something that like feels almost like a roguelike extraction RPG kind of game where you're like building something while you're doing all the extraction stuff. Cool. So like there's sort of this meaning to why you're doing the things. You're building something outside of just the individual runs. Otherwise, it just becomes the classic roguelike of just run after run after run after run after run, and there's nothing happening between those runs, right? Yeah.
That's a great answer. So what do you find that players love most about Below the Stone?
I think the thing people like is this, it's the weirdest thing. it's this thing of like I've had people describe it as a calm. Like there's this Zen state people get into when they're in the game. And like you wouldn't expect that with a game that's meant to be like tough as nails, but
Sure.
like it's a game that like I feel like people enter this Zen state where they're like finding resources, they're mining.
Yeah.
They almost get a little lost into the world of
Yeah.
it, and I've really liked how people like kind of get immersed in this way of like, oh, I'm gonna build my next set of armor here, and I'm gonna stash this for later, and they start pre-planning like what they're gonna do next,
Right.
right? Um, I love that people treat this game in a way where it's like, oh, I'm gonna store my stuff for later, be smart about my gear in case I lose this good gear. I'm gonna have this backup set for later, and it's
Yeah.
like people are getting immersed. People are almost like living this little life in this game, and I really like that. Like
Yeah.
people sorting out their inventories and stuff. Like it's all the little things that like you see people do in games like Minecraft. You know, they have
Yeah.
all these chests with all this gear set aside, and
Yeah.
they have their own little story happening, right?
Right.
And I like that about the game. People
Yeah.
have their own little stories in the game.
Yeah, so I hear that it gives players like a sense of place and a kind of an existence inside of this world, which makes sense.
Yeah.
Like if that's what you felt was missing from Deep Rock Galactic, then it sounds like the reason that players love your game is exactly what you felt was missing, was like a reason beyond the run where
Yeah.
you can build something, where you
Yeah.
can build a home, kind of.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and make it so it's like, and eventually like we want to add like customization to the kingdom and make it so you can like really make it yours.
Yeah.
Like you can make it like, oh, I'm gonna put my statue there and my thing over here and
Right.
my sword collection over there. Like I want people to feel that kind of feeling
Yeah.
with the game.
Yeah. Awesome. So in terms of like your journey in terms of becoming a full-time game dev, were there anything that you wish that you could do differently, or like really critical lessons that you learned?
No, I with this game we were very fortunate that I've learned that a lot of early access games get really bad reviews, and we were one of the lucky ones that actually got like a good review score, right? We're at like an actual very good rating right
Yeah.
now, and not a lot of early access games get that.
Yeah.
Funny enough, like a lot of them end up mixed and poor reviews and stuff. We're at this like really high standing, and like what I learned along the way was like listening to the fans and hearing what they have to say. At the end of the day, you got to almost play doctor. You have to like a patient comes in and they're like, oh, my knee hurts. I need morphine for my knee. I need OxyContin for my knee or something. And they're like saying this like really strong drug, and it's like, maybe let's start with something smaller and like see how it works. And it's like there's a lot of like doctor patient that happens with like making a game.
Sure.
Sometimes players will be really good at knowing the problem,
Yep.
but not the solution.
Yeah.
So like it'll be very like, this enemy hits too hard, get rid of the enemy, right? That's not the solution.
Yeah.
They made a solution statement. You gotta separate it and be like, okay, that was the solution statement they had. This was the problem. All right, let's wash away the solution statement.
Yeah.
Now we know what the problem is. Let's figure out a way to come up with our own solution for it. Maybe, okay, we just got to tweak a couple numbers. Oh, we noticed they have a lot of health, so let's just lower their health, maybe lower their damage. Oh, well, suddenly the enemy's great now. You know, like all that simple change helped, right? So I guess one of the things and this is kind of wrapping back to the question of like, what would you do different?
Yeah.
I went into another podcast where they asked me this about Kickstarter and funding and everything. And they asked me the same question, like, what would you do different with the first Kickstarter versus the later Kickstarter that got the funding? And I really said, I wouldn't do anything different because I learned from the failures.
Yeah.
Like I picked up the failures along the way, taught me what I need to do, right? And I know like at the end of the day, the reason for the question is really to ask like, how would you prevent those failures from happening, right? Like for other developers, for like, oh, what are the hurdles you faced, Mike,
Sure.
when you went through game dev?
Yeah.
The crux of the question is like, oh, how do you stop those failures from happening? I don't think those failures can be stopped, but what you can do is learn from those failures and learn along the way and improve what you are and improve your skills overall as time goes on.
Yeah.
The ultimate difference between people who fail in game dev and the people who succeed in game dev, I find, is like, it's not a luck thing. Of course, there is luck involved in some cases, right? Sometimes it's like, you can't discount everything, but like I will say that like a lot of things are in your control. A lot of things that like I learned was just keep trying, keep going at it, evolve, try to find ways to adapt and overcome the problems that you've faced when you went through this. So I could have quit when we failed that first Kickstarter. I could have just been like, this isn't it, guys. I'm done. You know, like that could have been it, and then Below the Stone would have never been a thing. But we decided to keep going, and because I looked at it and I said, like, what are the things we can learn from this?
So said more concisely, the difference between and I appreciate the context, but you said something really important there. You said the ultimate difference between those who succeed and fail. Can you wrap that up for me? It sounds like you're saying not giving up, or how would you put it?
I think the ultimate difference really comes down to those who surrender at the first sight of failure versus the ones who look at it as a lesson. I think that's the crux of what I think on that. The people who look at their failures and go, I learned this.
Yeah.
Let me write it down. Let me put it into writing. Like, oh yeah, I could have done this better. Yeah. Let's hit it again. Let's do it again. Roll back the tape. We're trying it a second time, you know?
Yeah.
I think that's the major difference.
So basically a growth mindset.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Exactly.
Perfect. Yeah. Do you have any thoughts about what's next for you after 1.0, after the potentially few updates after 1.0?
Yeah. I think after 1.0, what I want to look at next, and it's something that you covered in your videos too, like actually properly, and this was a thing where I learned along the way, right? Like when I first started game dev, it was just kind of a dreamy-eyed guy, like just out of kind of high school, just being like, all right, I'm just gonna be a game developer, right? But like now going into it more like, okay, let's actually do some math and see how long we're gonna work on this next game on, right? Like how is this gonna financially make sense long term working on this game, right? You covered that in your one video, specifically talking about de-risking game development, right? Like that was a thing that like really, like that video really hit me. I'm like, oh, man, this is a good way to like look at this thing, right? Like at the end of the day, it's just logical. Not a lot of people think of game dev that way.
Yeah, the longer you work on something, the more you have to sell for it to pay off.
Yeah, exactly.
That's really important. You can sell a lot less copies and still be successful if it only takes you a year to build it.
Yep, exactly. Yeah. And I've been looking at games like one inspiration I've had recently was Mosalina, if you've heard about that game.
No, I haven't. How do you spell that?
Mosa. It's like Mona Lisa, but backwards. Mosalina.
Okay.
And it's like this puzzle game. It was Mosalina and web fishing. Those two games really hit me in a unique way.
What about them?
They're very simple games.
Yeah.
With a nice polish on the outside, like just clean. And when I look at those games, I'm like, that is something you can complete in like 6 to 8 months.
Yeah.
Both of those games. Yeah. And when you brought up de-risking game development, this was a thought that I had in my mind for a while, and I was just like, I don't have the words to like, I don't have the words to like name this thing, but like that is a good way to name it. It's like de-risking game development, having projects that are maybe 6 to 8 months long, and it's just like, all right, this is going to be done in a year, and we're gonna give ourselves that year. A lot of people use the word scope creep. Like, oh, this game became a 3-year project when it meant to be a 1-year project. And like those are important lessons to look at. Like, but finding games that are simple and fun and giving it like this almost like encapsulated experience that people can enjoy, and not asking too much of like, oh, we need to make it an MMO RPG where you interact with every NPC and it has infinite content and so forth. Like that's a road that like maybe 15 years ago, more game devs were looking at things that way 15, 20 years ago. But now I think it's like these simple encapsulated experiences that you can finish within a small span of time, and releasing them, having like a library of those kind of games. Like, oh, I have this small game I worked on for 6 to 8 months. I have this game I worked on for a year. I have this game I worked on for 8 months, right? I think after Below the Stone is done, I want to work on simple things finally. That's going to be my dream of like almost like the simple, like, oh, I live in a little cottage, I'm living a simple life now. I have my complex game. I live the complex city life of working on Below the Stone, and now I'm going to just have my simple life in the cabin. I feel my little farm. Yeah.
People mention scope creep a lot, but I think there's kind of, it's not descriptive enough, because I feel like there's two kinds of scope creep. There's the scope creep of like adding a little here, adding a little there, and then it's this whole big thing. But there's also just coming up with an idea that's complex fundamentally. And then they go, oh, scope creep made it big. It's like, no, you planned something, maybe you hadn't thought it through all the way. Like,
yeah, exactly.
Your example with web fishing, if it's a really simple experience, that's, it's not, scope creep's not really going to happen. Like, yeah, you could
it's hard to tack on extra stuff.
Exactly.
Like, it becomes harder,
Whereas, like, for I think both of us, so we're both working on 5-year games. I don't think that my game Spellmasons took 5 years because of scope creep. I think it took 5 years because I set out to make something really ambitious without the wisdom to know how ambitious it was.
Yeah, and I feel that too. Yeah. That was the thing that like we went into we were like, oh, well, there's only so much you can do with Below the Stone, and then eventually became like year 2, year 3, early access, fans coming in. Yeah. We got lucky, we have a big community, but then it was like, oh man, we have a big community that's all telling us things to add now, and it's like, oh man, like this became like such a big thing now. Like it's I mean, your game slowly becomes not yours in a way. Now it becomes almost like once you put your artistic work out there in the world, and a lot of people who are like movie directors and stuff say this, like once you put a creative work out there, there's a lot of people that say like you're almost surrendering it to the audience now. Like now it's theirs in a way. And while you're still developing it, they're giving you feedback and, oh man, I discovered this thing. There's this weird quirk in the game. Fix this. And then suddenly, now you have hundreds of suggestions. Oh, add this thing. I want pets in the game. I want this in the game. I want that. And like suddenly, your list that was like maybe 2 pages long just became like 20 pages long of like all this content people are pleading for you to add, right? So
how do you manage that? Because it feels like a fine line to honor the community, but also not to take on things that aren't good for you as the creator or the game at large.
Yeah, I think I go back to the doctor-patient analogy. Like, at the end of the day, you need to decide like, okay, is the patient coming in because of like how bad is the knee injury that we need to give them a cast, or is it just like a small ankle sprain, right? And then like if they're like, oh my god, get rid of this enemy, get rid of this whole zone, this zone sucks, like instead of getting rid of the whole zone and like cutting like 2 months of work, maybe there's a better solution. Like, oh, we just noticed that the vines in this biome just happen to be spawning a little too frequently and making it hard for people to walk through it. Let's decrease the rate they spawn, and now suddenly it's a lot less hazardous to walk through this biome. And suddenly you see the complaints dwindle to nothing, right? So it's like that little solution where you're just finding a way. Like I always go back to that analogy. I find the doctor-patient thing is very accurate. It is a thin line finding what it means to give the audience and the customer and the people that play your game what they want versus, the am I surrendering what this game was about from the beginning, right? Like there's a lot of people who are like, add easy mode to Below the Stone. And I'm like, that kind of goes against the whole idea of the game in a way, right? Or some people are like, oh, add a mode where you just don't lose everything. And I'm like, it's kind of giving something up about the game in a way.
Yep.
You know, but yeah, it's tough, you know?
And that's important. Like it's hard to say no to the people who are literally supporting your dream. But if you don't, it just would become the infinite everything game. And you are creating a specific vision. And so, yeah, you got to walk that fine line of honoring that vision and also honoring the community and finding where those intersect.
Yep. At the end of the day, it's like they purchased this game and your dream in a way because it's what you promised it to be, right? So if you go off track, and not everyone's going to be right, because every player is going to have their own opinion of what direction the game's going to be.
Yeah.
And if you poll people, it might be it's splintered everywhere,
for sure,
right?
Yeah.
So eventually, if you
everybody.
make it, and if you try pleasing everybody, you please nobody.
That's right.
You know?
Yeah. How do you say no?
Is this like how do you politely say no?
Yeah.
Sometimes I like at least discussing the idea, right?
Yeah.
I at least like the idea of discussion behind something, because then it gives me like, when somebody gives a suggestion, they're kind of putting their heart out there, right? And that's how I felt when I put my game out there in the world. It's like I'm putting my heart on this platter. I don't want somebody to be like, what is this thing? And slap it out of my hands, right?
Yeah.
Like I want people to appreciate this thing.
Yeah.
And I think the same goes for players who have their ideas out there. So like even giving like a 5-minute discussion, a couple minutes to just be like, oh, that's a fun idea. We would probably come into these challenges by adding this. It's something that we don't mind talking about, or like seeing how other people feel. Like I go about it very politely.
Yeah.
Like I like discussing the idea at the very least, because then at least I'm saying like, hey, I appreciate you liking the game enough that you're willing to have ideas for it and start to be like, it's almost like when I was a 10-year-old kid being like, oh man, I would be so cool if this game had this. And like my little nerd self on the computer just being like, oh, developer, add this thing. This is so cool. Yeah. You know, like it might have been the worst idea in the world. Like it would have changed everything. Just make this an MMO. This would be great. You know, like 10-year-old me would have appreciated a game dev talking and being like, oh yeah, MMO, that's cool. It's tough to do an MMO, you know, like at least somebody like talking about it a little bit is enough for me sometimes, you know?
And then there might be some of that Dr. Patient motif in there where it's like they're saying that because of some reason that you would agree with if only you could like tease out the true source of it. Yeah.
And sometimes you have to like look into that sort of thing. So like sometimes people, we're doing a big combat update in Below the Stone right now currently.
Cool.
And a lot of people have like a lot of big ideas about combat. Like they're like, go full Elden Ring with it, you know, go like timed combat and stuff. And I'm like, there's certain ideas of that combat, which like, I'm like, yes, these are cool things. We don't want to just copy Elden Ring, right? We're not just going to copy the Elden Ring system, but we can do things that are reminiscent, or ideas that are like, going back to the Dr. Patient, it's like maybe they're trying to say something about the combat, like, oh, they want combat to be more engaging, like, oh, there's timed things to avoid, or oh, there's actual like heavy attacks versus small attacks and more variance in the combat, right? Like you, in a way, they're saying a lot of things just in like a very short, concise way, like, oh, just make it Elden Ring, right? But by saying that, you're saying a lot of various things, and you can agree with some of it and disagree with other parts of it. You know?
Do any of the games that you play these days inform where you take Below the Stone?
It's kind of funny. So if I go into my Steam library right now and sort through it, I got a huge inspiration from like Nuclear Throne and Terraria. Like Terraria's inventory specifically was like a thing where I'm like, oh, we can do this, we can do like a trash slot like this, and like it's kind of boring stuff. It's like not super exciting like gameplay, like oh combat and all this exciting combat stuff. It's like, oh, their inventory does this. That's a very unique way of doing that.
Yeah.
Let's do that. You know, it's like in a way it's kind of boring stuff, but it's like to me it's fascinating the design process.
Well, it
of,
may
like,
be
thinking
boring,
how
but
these
it's
things
important.
Yeah, exactly. Like people don't second think that stuff. Like when a game has a trash slot, a developer needed to think, oh, does this trash slot make sense? Players need to throw out items, and like they went through all that thinking, and the player just like doesn't even give it 2 seconds. Just like trash item, you know, like they're not putting thought into it. You know.
What about Nuclear Throne? That's one of my all-time favorites, actually. I love Nuclear Throne.
Yeah, that's a game that I have. If I'm looking at it right now, it looks like 50 hours. I thought I had way more in that.
Yeah.
But
I gotta check mine because I'm sure that I have probably way too many.
I thought I had like 100 hours or more easily.
Let's see. Yeah, I have 285 hours.
Oh wow!
Throne.
There you go. Yeah, it's a favorite.
Yeah.
Yeah, Nuclear Throne, Enter the Gungeon. The one thing I liked about Nuclear Throne that I am recently kind of thinking of with Below the Stone is they have the mutations system.
Yes.
The idea of that, like every run you can do a little different like variants of your character. Of course, there's like metas people go for, but with Below the Stone, I was thinking of adding like sort of a hard mode to the game where you interact with certain cursed things in the caves, and they will give you these like curses effectively that are like mutations from Nuclear Throne.
Yeah.
And these curses will give you like a negative effect, but give you some positive on top of that.
Yeah.
So like, oh, I just made all the enemies in the game have double HP, but now I also have this new shield ability or something like that. So like now I'm able to do new things with the combat, right? I was thinking of that, doing the idea of like kind of allowing hard mode for people who want a more difficult experience and making it so there's like sort of like a default easy mode.
Yeah.
And then there's the more like, oh, I like a game that beats me black and blue, so I'm gonna just really increase the hardness here of the game and add all this variance and difficulty and stuff.
Yeah. I'm a big fan of that design mechanic of like giving players a reward who want a more challenging experience and making it optional so that they say, okay, if I want this super ability, it's going to get harder and I can, opt into that.
Yeah. And I don't personally like it being a slider. Like I feel like as a game designer, that's a quick way of going about it, but I like the idea of the game actually interacting with you. Like you interacting with hard mode in the game. So it's like I went to this cursed lodestone and I activated and then hard mode activated, and now it suddenly feels like more of a worldly thing than it does like I just went into the UI and ticked hard mode instead,
Yeah, that's UI difficulty is kind of an anti-pattern in my opinion. I think Mark Brown from Game Maker's Toolkit did a whole thing about this. It's like you don't actually know how hard easy, medium, and hard is going to be, and then there's also like an ego impact in choosing easy. Like you don't want to choose easy, but then some people are like, I can handle hard, and then they get absolutely destroyed. And so because difficulty is relative to each game, so. I think it was maybe his episode on adaptive difficulty where he talked about Resident Evil and how if you die too much, they actually decrease the enemies, which is very interesting. Difficulty curves are a very complicated thing. Have you... What's been your experience designing the difficulty curve for Below the Stone?
It's tough because we have so many different biomes and areas in the game.
Yeah.
So like... one area might be significantly tougher because we added this one particular enemy to that area. Yeah. And then over here, the game's really easy. So, like, there's this, like, soil, like, dirt biome, like a very generic biome that's got, like, potatoes that are, like, really dumb AI and they're, like, intentionally dumb. Yeah. So it makes it easy for players to go through. And then a moment later, you're, like, walking across this border into this new biome, and then suddenly you have, like, these hyper bats that are, like, doing dive bombs at you and stuff. And it's like, okay, we need to, like, have a gradient of difficulty for players, and because the game is procedurally generated, that makes it very difficult where you have to like, okay, there's procedural generation, but there's certain like hand-holdy things that like stop people from like going too far where they start going into areas where they die before they even get armor to deal with those things, right? So like we're in the middle of talks of adding like Terraria fascinatingly does this where I didn't even recognize this before becoming like a game designer or developer. They have these big trees that are in the way of the harder biomes in the game. So if you just start walking, they put a physical barrier in the world. Yeah. They have to like dig through in order to get to like the corruption and the later parts of the game. And like I didn't even realize that was a thing. I was just like, oh, that's a cool big tree. I'm gonna just dig right through it and get to the next area. But in a way, they were just adding like a soft barrier for players to work their way into the next area. Yeah. So I was thinking about doing that with Below the Stone, just like little soft barriers to kind of remind people like, oh, you're going to the next area, kid. You know, watch out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. How would that work? Because like you mentioned soft barrier. I encountered some materials I couldn't dig through in Below the Stone, but that's like a hard barrier. If how would you make it identifiable and enough resistance to try to maybe convince some people to turn back, but let the more courageous players push through? Have you had any thoughts about how to implement that?
Doing like rings around the game where when you spawn in the center of the map, then having 2 rings that go out from there. One that leads to the like medium difficulty biomes, and then having it that we were considering having maybe like a hard barrier at the very beginning. Like you need to upgrade from like a rusty pickaxe to like a tin or a copper pickaxe to like get through the first barrier. And then every barrier past that would be soft barrier, where it's just like a tougher material that takes you like maybe 3 or 4 extra swings to get through.
Sure.
And then maybe having that go out like an extra like 1 or maybe 2 or 3 tiles deep.
Yeah.
So you're like, oh, this is a new material. I'm going somewhere new. Like they do that. It's kind of fascinating. Like if you look into the psychology of just how things are in real life, like people do this in gardens actually. Like those canopies where they grow vines up them. They call that like a portal. And that's a thing in gardens because it's a transitionary point from one point in the garden to another point in the garden. Like, oh, I'm entering from the grassy area to the flowery part of the garden, right? Like that's a very psychological thing that happens in gardens when people are designing how they lay out their garden. In video games, you can kind of do the same thing. It's like, okay, I'm making a portal from one area to the other. Yeah. And that could be as simple as like, oh, the bricks were blue before in this dungeon, and now I'm entering the next room, and now they're red. Yeah. Now it feels like I went from one area to a new area. It feels like I entered something different,
So it's a visual cue.
Yeah. Just some little slight visual cue to kind of give people a little like, I'm entering the next space now, instead of it just being like you just walk from one point to another with no transition. Yeah. Because
in order for it to be a barrier, a soft barrier, players would have to know how to retreat back to safety. They would have to be able to identify it. I hadn't even thought of it that way. I was thinking of it as more of just like resistance. But if you give visual cues, then they know, like, they say they break through the wall, they encounter the dive bombing bats, and they're like, oh shit, I got to get back to the other zone. And so now they know they can make the choice themselves. Do I want to push into this difficult area, or do I want to go back to where I know? That's very cool.
Yep, exactly. Yeah. It's those little psychological things that, like, you might not think of even as a player. Yeah. You're just the game's just happening to you sometimes. You're interacting with the game and things are happening, and then some people don't even read those little signs. Like I said with Terraria, I didn't even realize those trees were meant to be something until later. I'm like, wait, that's a physical barrier. That's kind of preventing further exploration.
Right.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Mike, I'm out of time, but this has been a pleasure. Thank you so much for
that's been great
sharing your wisdom and your experiences. It's very cool to learn about what that's been like for you.